When I was 16, my family moved into a new house, and it was the first time all of us kids would get our own rooms. My parents said I could pick my room first because I'm the oldest, but I decided to just take whatever room was left. I wasn't home except to sleep between work, school, and football, so I didn't care how big my room was or anything. The day we moved in, I kind of just set my stuff in a corner of the living room, while everybody else chose their rooms, and helped my parents unload all of our stuff. You can probably imagine my surprise when I found out the only room that hadn't been picked was the biggest beside the master bedroom. To be honest, I didn't know what to do with all the space. We just came from a house where there were barely enough room to walk because all of my siblings' beds were crammed next to mine. And now I had a room all to myself that was even bigger than the one I had to share. Once I had all of my stuff set up and organised, I went to find my dog so we could watch a movie in my room. We'd been watching movies together ever since we got her 6 years before, so this was a pretty regular occurrence. I found her chilling in the living room after a day of running around in the backyard, and called her to follow me after picking a movie out of the collection. She hadn't ever been able to run off a leash because we lived in a townhouse before without a backyard, so she was having a blast. She followed me until we hit my brother's room and wouldn't come any further. My room was at the end of the hallway and was part of the original house. Everything except for my room and the dining room was an add-on, so there was a fair bit of distance between my room and all of the others. I figured that it was because she hadn't explored everything yet and just needed time to adjust to the new place, so I just shrugged it off and watched my movie alone. Later that night, I was in the dead of sleep when I randomly woke up and found myself staring into the darkness and wondering what had woken me up. I hit the button on my alarm clock, and once my arms adjusted to its blinding blue glow, I saw it was a little after 1:30 AM. When my arm left the comfort of my blanket to activate the light on my clock so I could read the time, I became immediately aware of how cold it was in the room. October in Arizona is nothing like anywhere else in the US. You can still comfortably wander around outside in a tank top and shorts if you want, because it normally only gets down to around 80 degrees Fahrenheit at night, but it had to have been in the high 50s or low 60s in there. I realise this isn't by any means cold, but when it's consistently as hot as it is in Arizona, this was like waking up in a freezer by comparison. Over the next couple of weeks, this continued to happen, despite the fact that the thermostat was set to 75 degrees every night, and other things started happening as well. I was always uneasy being in that room alone, so I eventually convinced my dog to sleep at the foot of my bed one night to make me feel a bit better. She stayed in there the whole night, but she seemed pretty stressed, and when I got up to let her outside in the morning, she just refused to go to the side of the house at all. At this point, I was starting to have stuff go missing, like homework assignments and pencils that would show up where I left them a couple of days later, and it felt like when someone is looking over your shoulder and you can just feel their gaze. It even got to the point where I couldn't have the closet door slid open because it just made the whole room feel off when it was open. After about a month of this, I just started crashing on the couch in the living room and avoided going in my room unless I absolutely needed to. After I'd been sleeping on the couch for about a week, my brother decided he wanted to switch rooms since I wasn't really using it anyway and he had a lot more stuff than me, and even though I tried to tell him it was a bad idea, we switched rooms. I didn't have anything weird happen in my new room and he hadn't said he noticed anything, so I figured that I'd been on edge for nothing until a couple of nights later. One night, I heard banging coming from my old room and figured my brother was just moving things around. He was a night owl, so this wasn't altogether an uncommon thing for him to do. The next morning, he looked absolutely drained, and I asked him what he expected if he was going to be up all night banging around. He kind of gave me a sideways glance and asked me what I was talking about. When I said that I could hear him moving stuff around all night, the colour drained from his face. I asked him what was up, but he denied anything was, and we just went on with our day. I started noticing that he was more moody than usual and seemed to be sleeping a lot more during the day. My mum started picking up on it as well, and we kept on asking him what was up until he finally told us. He was having the same experience as I had been having when he moved into my old room, but he didn't care because it interested him. My family's real religious except for him. He decided that he didn't want anything to do with religion at a pretty young age, and we all just let him do his thing because we didn't want that to come between us. He told us that he'd been looking into black magic and stuff like that. I don't really understand it, so I won't pretend I know what I'm talking about. But he said that he was messing around with spells and stuff for kicks, and one night he woke up to a shadow figure peeking out at him from the closet, and when he got up to tell me off for trying to scare him, it rushed to him and disappeared into thin air. It turns out, the banging around I heard that one night was him trying to figure out what could have made him see that because, as I said before, he didn't believe that kind of stuff existed. It got worse over time, with things like that being a regular occurrence, and eventually, the rest of us having to deal with weird stuff going on that I won't write down because this is already long enough, but maybe another time. He still plays around with tarot cards, and has even talked about trying to get hold of a Ouija board on occasion, so I'm not exactly sure what to do about it, but he will be off to university soon enough, and I'm going off to the army this summer to pay for the schooling I've been doing, so I guess he will have to try and figure things out for himself. My parents were nice enough to let me stay at home while I am going to university, but it's still really expensive, even with my full-time job. If anyone has suggestions on how I can help him out, I'd be happy to hear them. I mean, he is my brother, so I don't want him to mess with stuff neither of us understands and get into some trouble I can't get him out of.